And but for the admissions portal, there are so many types of users and there's lots of bells and whistles. So there's the group of folks who really just want to log in, find the list of their applicants, click download and download all of their applications and work completely outside of the system and then be able to email those to their reviewers. Totally fine way to go. And then at the other end, there's folks who want to do all sorts of in-depth analyses and reports and forms and export and spit out rank ordered rank lists and all sorts of things. And so when we do webinars and Q&As, sometimes it's been very complex because we can go down a real rabbit hole with something very complex and we've lost 90% of the viewers. So the goal of today is to go over the top 10 things that I get questions about and the customer service are getting questions about. And then we might not go into as much depth as you hope on a certain topic. But in that case, what I'd really hope is that you could either reach out to me or to the tech support for the admissions portal folks who can set up a time and walk you through that particular aspect. And it's probably the most efficient way. But we want you to know about all of these features and hopefully each of you is going to walk away with at least 2 or 3 things that you didn't know that might be helpful for you this season. And I think about the admissions portal kind of like a video game where each year you're playing it for the next time. And so as you go through, you start to pick up the special fruits or the bonus points or the stars. And so you pick up a couple of new features each year you play. That's the way I think about it. So at this point, let me turn it over to Matt, who can start walking you through it. And again, I think just to make sure we get through all the top 10 things, feel free to put in your questions in chat. And then we will cover those questions at the end. Matt?
All right. I think I just need to be set as one of the presenters and then I should be able to share.
Oh, great. You're all set, Matt.
Alrighty, wonderful. I will be pulling that up here 1 second. All right, I believe you all can see the screen, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right, wonderful. So we have a brief slide deck here that'll be shared afterwards as well. And throughout some of this, I might kind of escape out of the slideshow view and then jump over into an admissions demo to show some of that. So bear with me on some of that jumping back and forth. Righty. There we go. Sorry, that wasn't moving. All right, so top things, 10 things you should know. We've listed them here as kind of a summary of what we're going to be walking through. Trying to start with some of the more simple things and kind of work more into the more complex. High level, we'll start off with pretty much every account an administrator at any account will need to know, and then kind of transition to how do we get the data out of the system, and then how can we look to grow if you're looking to do review and whatnot, some of these more advanced functions inside admissions. Touch on some of those. All right, first thing, logging in. This, I know sometimes, it's been a long time since the last time. Whatever email address you had used previously or your users had previously used, they can use them again. They can go in as well, and if their email has changed, when they log in with their old email, they can update that value if maybe their name has changed and email address has changed over the course of that year. And you can use there's a general login if you have your email address, and there's going to be a forgot password link. But definitely if you have an email from the past and you don't know your specific link to log in, you certainly can. But once you do log in, then you'll be able to get routed to your correct account. One thing, so I think this has come up a bit. Definitely, if you guys have reports of this, keep those sending in terms of email being delivered to your institution and some of the email addresses. Um, every institution has different levels of filters when it comes down to email policies and whatnot. And so we've heard of some institutions having to kind of adjust some of that to make sure those password reset emails or those invitation emails get through. If your users you can't find it or don't remember their invitation, or maybe it was last year and they never logged in, you can see on the user screen if they've logged in or not, and send them another invite. But if they haven't, but any user that's having any issue that's been there before, recommend reset your password. Click that forgot password link. Again, you'll generally have some sort of a URL that's been sent to you previously, or use that login screen that we just saw link on the previous slide. Again, these will be shared so you can click on them. And try to go through that process to reset your password if you can't remember it, or if your users can't remember if they had used a certain email or whatnot. It'll only get sent to them if that's the email address on file. And if there's any concerns, again, about those emails being delivered, you certainly can contact support. They can help you troubleshoot if there's reports of those emails somehow not getting through on your end, since the email filters at your institution may be preventing that from getting through. And you can certainly contact your IT team as well. They may be able to look into those emails getting hung up and some sort of a filter on their end and may be able to let those through. That would definitely be recommended. So big one, once you log in or you get there, what are the browsers that I should use? These three tend to be the most successful: Chrome, Edge, and Firefox. Again, it's up to your preference. Those are the ones we kind of recommend the most. So definitely update your browsers, make sure they're updated. Not everybody has the ability to always do that on your system, but if you have any issues with that, certainly feel free to contact your IT team or contact our support team. If you think your browser should work, but just something within the system seems like it's not working as well as you'd think, or doesn't look the way that it is, they certainly can help you understand how to figure out what browser or browser version you may have. And your IT team may be able to help you update those if that's the issue on your end. Once you log in, there's a couple of elements here. We want to make sure we included some of these screenshots so you can go back and reference this. Depending on your screen size, when you're viewing an application in this case, there's kind of two sets, and I'll demo this here in a little bit, just kind of so you can see where this comes into play. Based on your viewport, so the size of the width of your screen, and how much you're zoomed in or how much you're zoomed out, the screen will kind of hide some different elements sometimes in order to make other elements still fit. And those two are on the side. So there's that blue menu all the way on the left-hand side. If you have a wide screen, you can control whether you collapse that or whether you keep it expanded. If you have a small screen, it'll automatically collapse. And then if you have an even smaller screen, when you're looking at an application, this navigation where you can like click and jump between sections of the application will get hidden as well. And if you don't see that, you see, hey, the navigation's not there, my view looks like this bottom image, it's because you need to zoom out on that screen, or maybe expand your window if you've made it kind of small on the on your desktop. So that it's still there, it just kind of gets pushed off the screen and hidden so that the application contents can still be viewed and read. So quick point there that can be super helpful if you're trying to figure out, I just disappeared, where did it go? It's probably just control minus or whatever it is on your computer to zoom in or zoom out. We'll be able to make that navigation show up again so you can more quickly jump down and around the application instead of just scrolling. I'm going to jump in. I'm going to demo this here quickly to see how this all works. So I have my browser, close out. I'm pretending to be Kimberly Hall here in this test account, so I can submit reviews. So as you notice, when I scroll smaller, did everybody see that? Catch that's the blue menu disappearing, kind of collapsing to the side. And I can do that manually as well. I didn't generally recommend this. It's just a little easier. You have a little bit more space to work with it collapsed. But if I go and I look at an actual application, which is where we want to go, we'll touch on that here in a little bit. And I have a really small screen. In this case, I'm going to zoom in a lot, making it big. You will notice that based on my current screen width, that disappears. There's one other little tip of things you can do, which isn't as obvious. I didn't include it in the screenshot, but these different tabs here is kind of controlling my left-hand panel. And so that takes up the screen on the right-hand side. So sometimes you can't get rid of this panel if people are trying to like dismiss it and say, oh, I want this to go away and I want the side nav. That's just, you can't do that here. So you would need to zoom out to be able to see that left-hand kind of, we'll call them the shortcuts, the quick links, the index of the document. All right, let's jump back in here. Oh, we're all the way at the bottom. All right, let's jump through this again. Sorry. All right, next one. Help. If you need a question, I hope most folks, I know we've heard from a number of people, over, the past few years and cycles, we've kind of continued to add in what are the ways we can help guide you through this system and be successful. One really quick, easy way is that question mark. So the question mark will pop out. It'll say, hey, here's a help center. There's a link to the admissions help center, and there is the contact us, right? So, hey, send us an email right here. You click that, it'll open up an email in Outlook or whatever you use on your desktop, saying, hey, help me. This is who I am. I have a certain issue. But we know people like to say, hey, I just need to know how to do something. I remember, maybe I did it before. Where was that? You may not, again, once a year, kind of coming in here, trying to dust off all the cobwebs and remember how to do something. Lower right-hand corner should have a little purple like guideposts icon. When you click on that, that'll expand out into a series of tours that walk you through screen by screen. It's not a video. It literally takes you to those different places to show you what to do or what not to do. If you have any questions on that, or if there's anything that seems like maybe it's changed since last year, the last time we took one of those tours, definitely reach out to us. So, contact us, but you can point your users to that as well if there's certain things that they're trying to do. A lot of those are geared towards administrators, who are logging in. How do I archive a program? Those sorts of things. And a lot of what we are going to talk about throughout the rest of today will be covered by some tours as well. So there's certainly ways for you to get guided through these different steps in your account with your data, walking through those screens. And if you have any idea for tours that don't exist yet, certainly you can submit those. Let Kimberly know, and she collaborates with us on making sure we can build ones that are helpful and informative and help users, that all of you and all of the folks at your institutions be able to know how to get in and navigate and be effective in the application. So speaking of those users, we got to create them. One of the things that I've seen sometimes people get a little hung up on is the role. So this is just the create new user screen. If you're curious about where do I go, how do I get there, what are the things I need to do, there's a tour for that as well that kind of walks you through those screens. How do I get here in settings? For those who may be a little less familiar, once you get to add a brand new user, you have to put in their name and their email, but there's a role, and you can create users without roles. Sometimes people create a user without a role. The person goes to log in and they can't see anything, right? Because they just didn't have a role and they forgot to give them that. So that's really important. Make sure you do that. By default, you all have a role called administrator that pretty much has access to kind of everything that anybody can do in the system. Depending on who you are bringing into the system, you may want them to not be able to do everything, right? And so there is the ability to create roles, which we're going to talk about here shortly, that can restrict what your users can do or see. But just make sure when you are creating users, just give them that role value. And then they may all be able to be administrators, and that certainly is fine. That's up to you. So one of the examples we're going to use in talking through, and this is all in the PowerPoint, so you can go back here and reference this, is creating a role and taking advantage of some of the options within that role, which says, hey, what can a user do or see inside admissions to take out data, in this case, data that, let's say you're located in New York City, and you need to take out and kind of hide the criminal history. Now, this could go for any other use case that you can think of where you've got a certain group of users that shouldn't see a certain amount of data. In this case, everyone in your account shouldn't be looking at this data point, probably just because your locality says this information can't be relevant in making some of these decisions. So we're going to walk through where would you go to actually see that and hide that data. And it's a pretty straightforward process. And as long as you know what is the data that you want to hide, that's really the first step. So first, settings. It's this little gear icon at the very bottom. So we just kind of saw that just briefly in the demo. We can certainly walk through some of these flows. This is where you go to manage your users, your settings. All of that is inside the settings, the users and roles. So we're going to select the roles item here, or create a new one. So you can edit the existing administrator one, or you can create a new. And then you would scroll down, and towards the bottom, there's this area called data restrictions. And that's where we're going to be jumping in here. And that, as it says here, we're trying to hide specific data values in the forms, et cetera, from users. They can't see it. They can't download it. They do an export of a PDF, that data won't be in there. This kind of removes at the core level this information from being accessible to these users. So it's going to be in compliance with your locality's rules, in particular around ban that box. So in this case, if we're talking about the example of this criminal history, that's the information we want to remove from our users' ability to look at and export and filter on. That's housed in the specific case inside this specific form. If you have questions about, I'm trying to hide these data, I see it here, how do I take this question and then go figure out where it lives here? There's certainly some resources we could provide to help with that, but generally the naming conventions of what you see on the application is going to help you find that question or questions listed here. So we're going to select that other, and then within this, there's a series of checkboxes where we have these different questions. And in this case, it's kind of a smattering of questions, right? Maybe it's an entire form or section. If that's the case, there's an option up here at the top where you can say, hide all of the questions in this form. In this specific example, it's actually a set of several questions that are inside a form. So you really can get as high level or granular as you may need to in restricting a single question, 5 questions, an entire form, multiple forms from your users. In this case, there's these 2 questions we want to remove quickly from all of our users. We do that and it then would disappear. They see a little lock icon. They can never figure out what that data point is. All right, so this next one, seeing last year's applications. There should also be a tour for this. And this, what this means is when you log in, particularly early in the cycle, and you see some of your new applications coming in, you may have a handful, you may have a bunch. They're just double check to see whether or not your last year's applications have been archived. We've left those in there for historical purposes and reference purposes. And some organizations like to have them all present all the time and then just filter out the prior cycles for the purposes of being able to focus on the current year, but like to keep them all so they can see if a student maybe has repeated, if they were possibly denied the prior year or whatnot, be able to pull that up. But for most organizations, they're going to take a quick step to archive those. Again, there is a tour. This is an example of those guided tours coming up and having some topics, and you can kind of search through those quickly. There's also that Help Center Quick Start Guide at the bottom of that launcher. This one is kind of talking about what happens when you click on that archiving last year's applications. It's just, it's not me narrating it, but it is a step-by-step guide to going in and turning that off. It's a very, very simple thing to do when you turn off the program from last year. You just have to know which one is it, and there's some information in that tour to help you understand and decide on that. But you'll have a list of programs. You select the program that was the last year's program. Usually that's pretty clear in how it's named. And you open that one up. You can see there's this archive button. You simply turn that on, so it turns blue. You save the changes, and now those applications in that program, you're not going to see them anywhere in admissions. They kind of just get parked invisibly. If you want to see them again, if for some reason, I need to go find that on, you would come in here, you would unarchive it, save, and then those applications will show up again when you do whatever digging you need to see if somebody had applied or hadn't applied. Come back here, archive it again, and they will disappear. All right, and that will update on your dashboards and all of these other places. Most organizations, again, will do this early in the cycle. It's entirely up to your organization if you want them to be archived. Typically, that's just a cleaner, more straightforward approach that the majority of our AAPI partners have done. All right, and I'm trying to move quickly through some of those 10 items. So definitely if there's questions and whatnot, jot them down what they're related to. We can kind of jump back into this. Customize your dashboard is a really good example where I could demo this and all these different use cases for probably 2-3 hours. I'm just showing you an example of dashboard I kind of took and example accounts and moved some things around. It can be whatever, right? So these dashboards, if you want to use them and customize them, feel free to. If you want to skip right past them, that's totally okay too. This is one of the tools inside admissions that can be really effective for you and effective for your users if you want to really leverage it. But if you're just coming in to download applications, download PDFs of those applications, you don't need to worry about the dashboard or worry about customizing it. So it's a lot of power, a lot of things you can do, but again, it's very optional and definitely shouldn't get in your way. So this layout has been configured. You can lay them out in a whole variety of ways for your users. And there's a tour there that walks you through customizing your dashboard. Because if you want to update the dashboard for all of your users all of at once, there's a process to doing that. You actually change the report that drives the dashboard that they all see, but your users may customize their own. They may just personalize their dashboard themselves as well. So mainly what you're doing there is you're picking certain data points, certain variables that matter to your institution. So maybe it is the track, right, that they're interested in, or some status of are they qualified or not, international, domestic, whatever those data points are that to you drive really important visuals. Like I want to see this group and see how many of them there are. That's what the dashboard is for. They're all interactive. So if you want those charts to say, hey, I've got these 3 different sections, phase 1, 2, and 3 of my review process, I can click on phase 2 and then I can see those applications, right? So I can drill into those 12. And they do carry over cycle to cycle with like one exception, one field, which is the track. And you will need to update that annually, just to kind of pick the new tracks, and that can change year over year. And it's currently called internship program selection. In prior years, and I know this was something we talked about one of the previous meetings I was on, it had like a really funky name. It had like CQ underscore and a bunch of numbers and letters, right? That was different for everybody. That's not the case anymore. There's now a label for that, so everybody should have the same label of internship program selection, and that is the same field where they're picking that track, that program track, that or tracks that they're interested in at your organization. All right, so now we're kind of graduating from the management and maybe some of my rollover elements to just the kind of the essentials of how do I come in here and just find my applications, right? Just really just want to get in, get them, get out. One common thing is the confusion between contacts and applications. Because for you guys, you really only have generally one application per person. So those lists tend to look very similar. Especially if they're like alphabetically sorted, you look at contacts and then applications, they might look the same. Contacts are the people records. It's just, hey, this person applied to you. If I applied to 3 different cycles, I would technically have 3 applications. And you don't really need to go to contacts. It doesn't hold, that's not where you're viewing the application. That's not where you're downloading the application. You need to really just go to the applications tab. It's going to have all that information that you really care about and need. So you can go to contacts and look at it, but there's generally not much value there for you. So click on that little book, especially you have this panel collapse, you only have the icons. It's really easy to be like, oh, look at my applicants, and you see the people, but you actually want to look at their applications. You want to read, right? You want to read their applications. So that's the book icon. And another really helpful thing, and we're not going to talk about filtering right here. We're more going to talk about what do I see on my grid. And so when I take a look at the grid of, it's like the view, I click on applications, we see that's what's highlighted on the left. On the right-hand side, in kind of the viewing canvas, we have a whole list of all of those applications. You can customize, because this is probably not the fields that you see necessarily when you look at applications. Maybe you just say name and email and program or something. You can customize those. So that little gear icon on the right-hand side lets you set the columns. There's a whole column picker where you pull in the different fields that you care about. And there's a little option at the bottom of that little picker where you can set that for all of your other users. So you want to go in and set up the 10 different columns that show up for all applications. and you can set, and hey, everybody else sees these 10 columns too, right? So this way there's a little bit more information, and most columns you're going to put in there are probably going to be sortable. So you can click on those, and that's user by user. Obviously users can click on whichever column they need. In this case, we've sorted on university. It might be hard to see the little arrow there, but you'll be able to see that as you click on certain fields that are sortable, it'll add that arrow in and sort accordingly. So you might have things like intervention hours, assessment hours, things like that that you want to include in your grid to be able to sort on. So one of those, we mentioned this previously with the dashboard, is that variable. So if you want to pull this in as a variable on your grid, you just find that internship program selection again. If you want to include this in one of your exports, it's again, cycle by cycle, you're going to have, this field repeated again. So you just want to use the current cycles version of this field, but it'll be called internship program selection. So that's what the field's called. Exports, dashboards, that grid, including that as a column, update it there, then that value will populate for everyone. So next, so this one, we're going to do a little demo on. I'm going to show you how this works, and just want to talk about what do we mean by downloading PDFs. This is one of those areas where, as Kimberly said at the beginning, it can mean dramatically different things to different people depending on what you and your team and organization are looking for. And so we're going to cover 3 main PDFs, right? And in all of these, you're going to get a literal PDF document or documents. But the contents and the structure of that is going to change a little bit, and hopefully kind of identify with which of these most aligns internally with your process. Typically with a PDF, you're going to get a document. It's going to have a whole bunch of pages in it, and you need to give that to somebody else, or you need to print it. And so there's different advantages depending on where you want those files to end up living up. If you're just trying to print them, you might default to one of these. If you want to actually store them all in some library internally and organize all the individual files, you're probably going to want to go more with another option. So we'll walk through each of these, kind of cover the pros and cons, and hopefully find something that makes your life a little bit easier when you're looking to extract the application PDF information. So first, we're going to start with the default PDF. Everybody has this. It's super easy. You can download those very quickly. They're just very long, right? There's an enormous amount of information in those. Most of it may not be relevant to you, and a lot of it you may not even care about being in a PDF. You may just want the actual documents that are inside it. So what were all the PDFs that they uploaded, their resume and transcripts and things like that. Or separately say, no, I don't want all of those in one PDF file. I don't want 15 PDFs in one PDF for a person. I actually want individual files for all of those things. I want the resume file for this person as a different PDF, and I want their transcript PDFs as separate individual PDF files, all in zip folders and whatnot. There's a solution for that as well. Let's jump out of this here for a quick second. We're going to go take a look at admissions again. All right, so I come back here to my applications list. We just have a single test record in here. You may have multiple. You may have 4. You may have 50. You may have hundreds. It doesn't matter how many are here. When you click on this checkbox, and then upper left by name, it's like that select all checkbox. It's going to select everything on your grid. If you have more than 20 or 25 that fit on one page at a time, there will be a little option here at the end where it says you've selected 5 out of 900 applications. Select all 900, and you would click on that little link and it would select everybody. And then you can just simply go and say, hey, I want to download the PDFs. And so here's one example of one of our tours. I select all the PDFs. I select all these applications and generate one PDF for each person that has everything inside it. Now, there are going to be really big PDFs, but I just want one per person, and I just want it to be easy. I just click default PDF, click download, and those 1 to 900 or how many ever applications you have is going to get thrown into an export job. And now that's going to run. You might see it here on the left-hand side. Oh, and it pops up and said it was downloaded. Now, if you had hundreds of applications, you said, I want PDFs generated for every single one of them, we're going in and taking all of their data, all their application, all their time to track data, all their attachments, and creating a custom PDF right on the fly for every single one of those. So that might take some time. You might log out, you might come back. So one thing you can do is if you're logged in, it's going to pop up and say, hey, look, it was completed. I can download it. Close out of that. If I came back and I hadn't been here when it completed, because it took a little while, you'll notice this little one showed up on the left-hand side around this little clock. So this clock is our notifications. And if I click on that tab, I generally only ever need to go here when I'm going and getting my downloads. So I click on this, I see downloads, there's that PDF export that I had run, and I click on that, I'm going to get that same modal that appears where I can download the files. So that's one way I can do it. I can get all these files out. When I click on this, it downloads it directly, and I open it up, and it's a pretty long PDF, nowhere near as long as yours because it doesn't have all of the data that a real record might have, but it'll be long. That's the very first way. I just want to export everything in just one big PDF. The next way is, okay, out of all that data, I don't need all of these forms. All of this information up top here doesn't help me. I'm not interested in it. I really just want to get all of these attachments. Let's scroll down here. Keep going past all of these forms down to the bottom of the document. I say, none of this matters to me now. I want to get these. I want to get these different attachments. That's what I want to extract. All right, great. So we're going to come in to settings, going to go to import and export and go to exports. And we're going to create a custom PDF export. So I click plus to create a new export type, click on PDF. And here I'm just going to say just documents. And then I'm going to come in and click customize contents. Check on that. Now I'm just going to call it, what do these things do? This is talking about the type of data that's present. So what we cannot customize is I want form 1 and not form 2. That isn't a current feature. It's on our roadmap, but it is not available. So if you said, hey, I want these 15 forms and I want these attachments, like it's unfortunately we can't get that granular. But if you said, for instance, I want my references and I want all those documents that were attached. Portfolios is what you want. We're going to take forms out. Maybe we'll take evaluations out. Those are like reviews that are done inside admissions by your staff. But we're going to include, the cover page so we know who the person is. We're going to include attachments, portfolios, which are any of those documents they submitted, their resume, CSV, etc., and then any references that we've received on that person as well externally. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to mark this as shared so other people can use this. And I don't necessarily have to save that or not. And let's see here. That's good. Sorry, my screen here is I'm a little too large. Create export. So that export is like a template. It's a recipe. I've just created a recipe and I can have that recipe run automatically via scheduling. We're not really going to cover that now. Just know if you don't feel like doing this manually, there are options for that. But we're gonna keep it simple for right now and come back here. I have my record, right? I can do the same thing. Click select all, go to export. And now we're going to see that just documents PDF. So it lists PDF right here available. So we just created that. And now any of my users can use the same thing. And I click download and it's going to run and it's going to process. And when I click on that file and open it up, you'll notice it's a lot shorter, right? It has in those evaluations and then it has in all those documents, those PDFs listed here. Much shorter, depending on the applicant and what they submitted to you, it could look dramatically different. So just keep an eye on that. So that is a quick way to just extract one type of data. I'm ignoring all the form data. Just give me one PDF of all of their documents all in one place. Now, if we wanted to go one step further and said, I actually don't want the transcript to be in there with the CSVs, to be in there with the evaluations, I want to kind of split those up. Really what you want to do is you want to export the actual files, right? So the files that we've received, we want to just hand over to you in the format and the way that we've received them. That would be adding in a new export, and you choose files. We're literally just going to give you the files that we have that we're pulling into the PDF, right, on the previous two exports, but you may just want the documents themselves. And so there's a files export, and within this, you can see on the left-hand side, what are the types of documents that we are receiving. We have our transcripts here. We have a cover letter and the CV and some essays, and maybe even that evaluation, letter of reference. We go, yeah, all those individual PDFs, I want those out as separate files. I want them to be able to be stored so I can drag them and drop them and move them around internally, because I don't want one PDF with all those things in it. I want an individual file for each of those. And you walk through this process, you add those in, they're listed here, give it a name. And then when you run this export, always export only. Wait, export. I come back here and I do this and do files export only, click download. It's going to give me a zip file. Now inside the zip file, and it's going to be hard for me to show you this right now, but there is effectively a folder. This zip for this person has within it four different PDFs. There's the evaluation PDF, and then these 3 other attachment PDFs, all listed out with their file names that were uploaded into the system. So you have a zip folder for every single applicant if you needed those individual attachments extracted as individual attachments. So a lot of options. Hope one of those might have seemed to be a little bit more what you were looking for. We're definitely looking at making the default PDF itself shorter for you, try to compress that where we can. That's something we're continuing to look at to make more efficient. But you do have some options depending on what your needs are to get PDFs out a little differently. All right, I'm going to try to cruise through these last ones. It is where we get a little more complicated, but hopefully we can at least elicit some interest from folks of, hey, is this something I want to do, and what do I need to look at? And so when it comes down to review, we're kind of at this last state where, I know how to get in the system, I know how my users can get in the system. I can take my application and just pull them out as a whole PDF so I can print them out or review them separately by somebody. But what if I wanted to do that review in admissions? And I'm not trying to follow up with folks internally and see if they've done it, or if they have created some feedback, try to write it down somewhere and collect it all. Can I just do that inside admissions so that everybody knows whether something's been done or not? And I can make sure people are filling out specific feedback in a way that is consistent and manageable and efficient. Then you want to do application review inside the system. There's really 3 main steps to that. 1, we're going to go to the right place and understand some terminology. 2, what is the information you want to get from your reviewers? And 3, how do you get that information out once they have processed that and submitted it? First, phases. So there's the term stage and there's the term phase. And for all of you inside with AAPI, there's the actual application phase 1 and phase 2. So it certainly is a little confusing at best. One thing is stage, where you see that inside admissions. You can ignore that as a filter. That is something that relates to functionality that if you were collecting applications, like multiple pieces at different times, that's where stages would start to come through. It's a non-factor for you. You can ignore that. Phase doesn't represent the phase. In this case, what we're looking at here under application review, the phases here speak about the steps in your review process. So what does that look like internally? Do you have 2? Do you have 4? Do you have 12? That's up to you. What are those individual steps in that review process that you want to manage? And you can manage it very linearly, or you can actually group some of them together and say, well, there's these 4 different flavors of review that each have a nuance to them. And the biggest element of these phases is you can put a form on each phase, or you don't have to put a form on it, but you can say this phase is attached to this form. So every time someone's in that phase and I put them there, people know that this is the form that needs to get filled out for them every time. They don't have to go find it. They don't have to write their own form, any of that. They can just go look at it. They can fill it out. They click save and they're good to go. And there's lots of other features in the system that make that efficient that we can explore a little bit more. One basic advantage you'll get is if you assign an application to somebody when they're in a phase that has one of these forms, they will get daily emails by default telling them if their applications aren't in fact reviewed. So they can click a button, it brings them right into the applications in the system, and they can do that quickly. I'm going to cover these screenshots quickly to give it a couple minutes for Q&A. There's definitely demo walking through what can I do, what shouldn't I do. There's a section inside settings, evaluation forms. This is where you say, here's the set of fields, information I want my reviewers to complete. Biggest thing I've seen here in just some different accounts would be, there's sometimes I've seen questions where it's asking the reviewer to more or less go find some data inside the application and then retype it here or re-enter it there. They don't need to do that unless you want to confirm that they in fact went and found that information and are aware of it. And it's more an indication that they were reading the application. But you don't need to do that in order to get the data out that way. So you don't need, a 250 question evaluation form. You should only really need to put in the questions that you want their opinion on. So is it good enough? How would you grade them? How would you rank them? Those sorts of questions and comments you can put inside these forms. And everyone should have some default forms in there that we kind of add in all from a basic template. So if you don't see that, or you don't know how to go about managing that, there are definitely resources in the Help Center to talk about evaluation phases and evaluation forms. The last piece I'm going to call out quickly here is when you go to take that data out and you want it out as like a CSV. So you have all these people filling out this information, grading folks. How do I now save that in my export, right? How do I extract that? What you're going to look for is look for the name of that phase. So in this case, it was review, and it might be a little hard to see here. There's a name of a phase was review, and under review. And within that phase, there was a form. And now there's a bunch of information about that phase. Generally, the information you care the most about is going to be the form that was submitted on the person. This little icon, and it's kind of hard to see here, it looks like 3 columns next to each other. What that means is it's like a little table. There's a table of data that you can include in your file. But when it comes to an Excel file, we have 1 row per application. We have to take that table and we've got to flatten it out. We need to pivot it from a table to a flat row. And the opposite of pivot tables in Excel, right? Where you're taking flat rows and pivoting them into tables, we're doing the opposite, pivoting from a table into flat rows. And so when you click on that, this little modal pops up. It's going to be a little alarming folks, a little overwhelmed, like, this looks really complicated. All you're going to do here is pick the fields in that form that you want to include. And then there's some other fields that you fill out as you're completing it. If you might have only 1 or 2 people reviewing the form, you can decide how many reviews do you care about. Do you want the, all the reason I have 9 different fields, different reviewers that submitted this. Most of the time, if you just have 1 person submitting a review on it, you're just going to put 1 in the count here, and then save it after you've added in the different fields over here that you want to include. In this case, it might be I want to do the rating and the assessment hours, and that's what I want to put in my file that I want to extract. So any of those data points that you're having them collect, you definitely can export them. Don't look for that triple columns in that form, and then you can save them in your application. The same thing I would say goes with if you're looking to extract different hours, like, hey, different time to track tables, I had this many hours, and these different types of assessments and all that sort of thing. Those will also show up with that little triple column icon, and will allow you these same kind of choices where you decide what sort of data points are you looking for out of that table do you actually want to save for this student, and those will just be added as columns next to each other in the export. All right, jumping quickly here to this last item, sending emails. I know some folks have done it, other folks haven't really done it much at all. Again, talking about email deliverability, every institution is a little different. And so what I would say is when you go to set up these emails and you send them out, if you have any issues with deliverability, certainly reach out to us and let us know. We might be able to help advise you and your team on what are the settings that you might need to configure in order for that to always go through. But one thing is just if you're setting up custom email templates, just make sure there's kind of like a from and reply to email addresses on those templates. Just make sure that they represent what you want them to look like. And there is, and I would definitely say anybody interested in any sort of emailing out of the system, there's going to be a webinar on 11/18 that we're kind of announcing to all of our admissions users. You might see a pop up in the system about it. We're going to explore just email across admissions, but as well as this updated email editor that's going to be coming in some of the marketing functionality. Many of you may be like, no, I do my email separately, totally fine. But if you are interested in learning a little bit more about email, there is a webinar there that you can attend as well. And I will stop now. I've talked a whole lot. Kimberly, anything you'd like to add before we open for questions, or any questions that have come in that you would like to bring up?
Well, while you're just talked about letters, Julie asked this question that I feel like is related to both phases and emails potentially. She says, when I change the decision for an applicant, I receive a notification that says this decision letter is already revealed. Delete decision letter. What does that mean? I don't want applicants receiving any info until we finalize our decisions.
I offhand, I will have to take a look into that. I'm
Okay.
not generally that has to do with if you've created decision letters and you're generating those, but I can take a look in that specific account to give you a little more advice in the context of how your account's been configured.
Okay, great. So I'm going to bop around a little bit. So some folks wanted to know, is there a way to see applications that have been started but not yet submitted?
No. So those applications, they only come through and get processed once they have been submitted by the applicants. So no, I'm not aware that there's currently the ability for those applications to show up. I think that's a larger just configuration across the board with this AAPI, these AAPI accounts.
Okay. There's a few questions. Seems like there's a lot of interest in restricting either. So you're assigning a reviewer an application, and some reviewers may know the applicants. They might have a dual role. They don't want them to see that. Can you set a restriction so that a reviewer only sees XYZ applicant?
Only sees XYZ. So if so here's the kind of workaround. I'll actually create the account here. So if we come into our roles and we create a new role, and we're going to call this reviewer, and we're going to call it only assigned. And then let's just ignore this functionality. So let's say I can, application review, and I can, view reviews and review and change tags. All right. Skip past all this other stuff. What we want to do is come here to this segment and this application visibility, and pretty much we're going to give them a segment of no one. And so I'm going to create a new segment. I'm going to say no application. This is kind of a weird workaround right now. And we would pick there's all kinds of fields. In this case, I'm going to say, I'm just going to just do one that I know isn't true. Okay. Just making up something. Create that segment. There's going to be 0 people in this segment, just the way that I created it. And I think there is maybe something on the help center that walks you through specific examples how to do this. It's just me showing you on the fly here. Let's create that role again. Let's see here. Reviewer, only see assigned. Give them a couple permissions. View reviews, tags, and review. And then we would come down to application visibility and say they can't view any applications. Now, once we create that role, these people will literally see no applications. However, the system says we have to show you applications you're assigned to. So at this point, I will see nothing, and then I will only see apps that I've been assigned. So you can manually assign it to those people, and the only applications they'll ever see are the ones that you've hand given to them. So those are the ones you might realize that they might know this person, never assigned to the person, they'll never see them or know that they exist.
Okay. So related to, again, it seems like there's a lot of questions about visibility. So
Okay.
One question is about not necessarily users and restrictions, but it's not uncommon to have folks, interns, then get hired onto postdoc, and they might be involved in selection the next year. And so a site may not want those postdocs to see the ratings and evaluations of themselves or their peers and whatnot. So once they're archived, is the privacy and confidentiality, so if you're adding a user the next year, can those new users see the evaluations and all the documents in prior years?
I mean, if the applications are archived, they're not visible to them. They're not
Okay,
visible to everybody.
that's
If
the
you
question.
unarchive them though for a period of time, you know, if you said, hey, I'm going to bring these back up, like technically, depending on what their permissions are, they might be able to see it.
Okay,
Um, you could create just segments. Like we saw for the, hey, there's no one in this segment. You could say, hey, listen, the only people in this segment are people in this current cycle. That's what I'm going to give folks. So my reviewers never see old stuff. You certainly could. There are plenty of options there. If there's a set of those, like happy to write up some specific examples that people could go and repeat.
Mhm.
Around the visibility though of like somebody else's review.
Mhm.
So we'll just touch on that quickly. There's this permission for view review. So if I take that off, this user won't be able to see other people's reviews, right?
Mhm.
Regardless, there might be 3 others on the application I'm reviewing. I can't see those. And I saw there was a question, something about extracting maybe, hey, what was my review? Can I just get that? If that person can only see their own reviews, they can just go to the applications directly to see them. And you could always do an export of just the reviews as a PDF, like we'd seen before, and just include reviews as the only thing in the PDF. If they
Mhm.
export that, all they get is their review. So there's definitely
Yeah,
ways to.
that's a great restriction because you don't want to be swayed by someone else's review. So it seems like best practice would be to check or uncheck view reviews from all users except for your own as training director or some other key person in your selection team. That's great. A quick question, it's 10:59, one last question, and I'm going to look at the chat and email folks with the answers to the questions that came in the chat that we didn't get to. But one quick one I think is quick is how come the number of applications I see in my dashboard is different than the number of applications I see on my application screen?
That's a great question. So there's a couple of ways that could be. This screen that I'm looking at can have filters. Sometimes we don't notice there's a little number up here. So I could add in a filter here and I don't know, just say, okay, and close that. So there's a one up here. This is going to filter my screen and I may not notice. So that's a really, really quick way. The other thing is your dashboard may have a filter on it as well. So whatever your dashboard is, when you go to that report, this doesn't have anything in it right now, but it can have filters at a program level. This is inside reports. So there's a number of things that could be causing your dashboard to show
It's 11 o'clock.
series of apps and your applications to show another.
Mhm. Wonderful.
But what you will not have is you will not have people that don't have access. Let's say they only have access to applications assigned. They're on their dashboard. It's looking at that same list, right? So those filters are applied everywhere in the system. So they'll only see up to 5. They go to applications, they're only going to see up to 5. They're not going to see all 150 as a number on the dashboard and see 5 inside applications. But you that can see all 150 may have a difference depending on your filters on application, or maybe some filters inside your entire report or within specific charts.
Great. So we're at the hour and I know there's several other things that we didn't get to, like talking about, should I use tags? What's a tag? Those types of things. So if you want to email me, I think what would be most efficient is if you have a specific question that didn't get covered, or just want a little bit more information on, shoot me an email, kimberlyhill@stanford.edu, no periods, no punctuation. And when we post this slide deck on the website, we can add some slides with hopefully some just really quick tidbits that will give you enough information to at least find the steps you need to answer to use that function.
Thank you everyone for joining us. We'll post the recording and we will post the slides once Kimberly has and added some more questions. I wonder if it would be helpful to add a slide on the difference between comments and tags.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, that's a great one.
Mm-hmm.
And I did see one quick question just for those who maybe hadn't noticed this. This is just an element within the UI that's sometimes hard to notice. Let me jump back in quickly. Is on the application, the info tab is highlighted by default, but the second tab is where the review forms are. The third tab is where you're adding comments, which will have more information about the difference between comments and tags. And then lastly, there's a tab that says all the history. So that, I think there's a question about that specifically. You can go here to get a little bit more detail about what's going on as well in the past. So just want to call that out. Everybody, this was fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. Look forward to getting your feedback, and have a great day, everybody. Have a great weekend.
You.
Wishing you all a very smooth selection season.